Welcome to the First Peak Podcast. I'm Ryan Morrissey, strength and conditioning coach, nutrition coach, and owner of Peak Custom Fitness Solutions. Today I have with me one of my clients, Nick Manis. Nick has been training with us over the last 2.5 years to overcome some injuries that he had in his lacrosse career and to prep his body for the upcoming MLL seasons. So Nick has a very interesting story. He's had a bunch of adversity in his career with injuries, and those have been followed up with big-time success stories. So Nick came back for his redshirt senior year at University of Maryland, and they won the national championship. Nick continued his career in the MLL with the Chesapeake Bayhawks, where he was an All-Star and a league champion after, again, a year of getting hurt. Nick continued his career starting a business and trying to figure out what to do next, balancing pro sports in the year of the pandemic along with this new business stressor. So learn how Nick took advantage of the year of the pandemic instead of sat around and waited for it to end. So he's got some really interesting stories and some physical and mental adversity that he put himself through, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So tune in as we dig into his story. Nick, thanks for coming in, dude. I appreciate it. No problem. So I think I wanted to have you in because we wrap every day when you're in here training. You've been training with me for, this will be hopefully our third lacrosse season. We'll see what happens in a couple weeks, right? So we have the PLL draft that's coming up. When is that? In a day or two?
Yeah. The college draft happens next Monday, so 26th, and then I'll be able to see what happens with me.
So we got our waiting game for that from obviously the dissolving of the MLL, and now we're in a crazy time, kind of post-COVID, sports getting back. I want to talk about the past year, and it's obviously been a crazy year for everybody, but I think your story is pretty unique. We did, some charity work and fundraising in a kind of a crazy way that was thrown together kind of last minute. But I want to dive into that, and I want to dive into your journey with sports, with lacrosse, and what you've kind of overcome over the past couple of years, highs and lows, right? And I just think that your story lately, but also kind of who you are and where you've came from, is something that can help a lot of people that are maybe struggling right now with work setting, with COVID, stay-at-home, depression. Kids, like how many high school kids right now are just kind of totally lost, right? They're normally in a time where they're getting ready to have a big recruiting year, or last year was their big year, their junior season, and everything was shut down. So we're in a tough spot, and they're trying to figure out how to navigate that, how to get seen, and I know a lot of kids are kind of missing the boat. So I think you've been through a lot, and it's good for people to hear that there's some positive stories going on, and overcoming adversity is something that you and I both kind of believe in. And knowing you for I've known you for a while, but obviously we've gotten to know each other well over the last 3 years. I think we're kind of cut from the same cloth, right? And we have a lot of the same morals and values and work ethic. And I just want to kind of dive in. So people understand who you are and your upbringing and how you got to the point where you are now, playing in the MLL Champion, playing at University of Maryland. Let's take it way back. So I know you went to Severn, right? I'm a St. Mary's guy, so I can't believe we're even in the same room right now. But when did you start playing lacrosse? When did this all start?
So my dad played lacrosse in Maryland, so it was, I don't think I really had a choice from birth. I was definitely going to be playing lacrosse. So I just remember way back when I started up with AYLA, the rec team in the area. And my dad and his good buddy John Lehman, so John Lehman, who also played lacrosse in Maryland, they were just kind of working together and coaching a team locally here. And John's youngest son, Matt Lehman, was on a team. And so my dad just kind of threw me out there when I was really little. I think I was in preschool at that point.
Okay.
So it'd be funny to be able to get some clips from that.
I'm
But,
sure, right?
don't think we can find those. Cameras are out.
Hopefully you're a little faster right now.
Yeah, right. But started up playing then. I just remember, it was just fun. You go out. My dad was coaching, Mr. Lane was coaching, knew some of the guys, but it was pretty funny because they were all much older at that point, but we were all little kids. And then from there, just kind of continued down the path with AYLA and started playing football, started playing basketball, and then kept lacrosse going as well. I actually had my number one passion was football once I started playing that.
Was it?
Just a lot of fun. Play for the Severna Park Green Hornets.
Yeah.
And enjoy that a lot. My coach was Greg Taylor, great guy. Played that for a while up until 8th grade. I took my 8th grade year off. But so through the time it was mainly football and lacrosse were my two favorite. And then just playing basketball as well.
Okay,
but,
cool.
Yeah.
Still can't jump though, right?
Yeah, no.
Just
Still working on that.
All right, so that's when people actually play 3 sports.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So give me your take on that. Like now being on the other side of it, kind of back into your career, growing up playing basketball, obviously a lot of the same principles as lacrosse, right, on the field. And then football, completely different animal, but a lot of things can carry over.
Right.
Like, what's your take on you playing those 3, and did they help you for lacrosse performance? And then, kids growing up now, getting into one sport, at what, 6, 7, and sticking with one sport all the way and being funneled into lacrosse. Give me your opinion on that stuff.
Yeah, I think times are definitely different as far as lacrosse goes. I mean, if you look at basketball, it's been the same for a while, the AAU side of things, and that's basically what lacrosse has turned into. I know me personally, if I would have been playing lacrosse year round, I probably would have lost interest, by the time I got into 8th grade or maybe high school. Just that's me. Some people love it. Some people want to play it year round. I'm not necessarily that person until I got to college because we had to. But I think, there are benefits to both sides. I mean, if you want to go play at the highest level of lacrosse, it's going to be a job anyways. So it's going to be a lot of hours, and, the more time you invest, obviously the more you're going to get out of it. So, the younger guys that are playing, I was coaching at Archbishop Spalding with Brian Phipps for the past 3 years. Not coaching there this year, but just seeing those guys and how good they are and how good high school players are, even compared to when I was in high school, it's really impressive. So you can tell the work that is put in does pay off for a lot of those guys. But for me, I love the change of seasons, and I love playing different sports. The different groups of people and, within the communities of each sport. I liked kind of the diversity of that too. Just because you don't, it wasn't the same group of people playing lacrosse that necessarily were playing football. Or playing basketball. So at Severn, it's a small school, so you get a lot of guys that are playing multiple sports. But just growing up, being able to play with everybody was really cool. And I mean, it is what it is. It's everybody is so worried about, in my opinion, where they're going to play in college, or where they can be seen and all of that, which it is hard for people to get recruited. It is hard for people to go to really good schools. I was fortunate that, my dad had played in Maryland. I knew people who were playing at Maryland. So, I guess you could say there was a connection, and, might have been a better opportunity for me to get a shot to walk on or play or do something. But at the end of the day, no one's going to take you just for shits and giggles.
Obviously.
And so I think a lot of people, and even from coaching with, the local teams around here, people just get so wrapped up in it. And it's if you're good enough, someone's going to find you. And also now working in sales, it's if you get your name out there and get in contact, I don't know how the rules really go with getting in contact with people or saying stuff like that. But you're basically your own agent. So trying to figure out the best ways to get in contact with coaches or get in contact with people who know coaches. Because at the end of the day, the coaches are going to want people that are good at lacrosse, obviously, that get good grades, and they won't have to worry about them. And then if they're showing the drive to really get in touch and be consistent about it, I think that shows how invested you are in yourself, because that's obviously very important. So
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So now, like being again on the back end, kind of looking back, I'm sure you played with some kids growing up that had a stick in their hand from the time they started with you, but they didn't have the experience with those other sports.
Yeah.
Did you see anybody? I mean, we all see it now, that kind of peaked early. No, not in a bad way, right? Peaked early because they were a great lacrosse player, but maybe didn't have the athletic skills that you were able to get from those three sports. And then as they grew up and everybody matures physically, and they maybe weren't on the right part of that curve, that their skills couldn't overcome lack of athleticism or size or speed or whatever they were missing out.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's almost like just experiences in life more so, and like people being able to handle it, whether it's the mental side of things, the physical. I mean, like you don't have to be the strongest, the fastest, or be the most the most noticeable person when you walk in a room to be good at lacrosse.
Yeah.
I mean, you could bench the most on the team, you could squat the most on the team, and you could be the worst player on the field.
It can go both ways.
Yeah, so it's a lot. I mean, lacrosse is really about smarts too, and just like understanding the game, understanding who you play against, which I didn't really grasp that until I went to Maryland and just saw how much goes in on the back end before you actually just show up and play somebody.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's people that, as you're younger, that are more athletic or bigger or stronger. And then as people sort of level the playing field, things change. But, I think it's really, really up to the individual to decide on what path they're going to take. And I mean, some people aren't as athletic as others. And some people, find that they don't even enjoy playing sports once you get into high school. So
kind of fair to say that everybody's path is different based on, maybe their ADD that can't handle one sport for 15 years and they need to diversify.
Yeah.
And somebody might need to put all their eggs in one basket if they want to play at that level because they don't have maybe the athletic skills. So they better be the best stick on the field. Yeah, got it.
Definitely.
Cool. So take me through your high school career. So we're at Severn. All right, we're playing three sports. What'd that look like? Interest in colleges, when did that come? Were you doing the summer, club and tournament deal back then? Not that you're that old.
Yeah.
What did that all look like? How to go down? And give us the story of getting into Maryland and how all that went down.
So it's kind of funny because then I felt like I was very good at lacrosse when I was younger, like in elementary school, and then maybe like sixth grade. But once like towards basically between sixth and eighth grade, I was like just okay,
average,
not that good. And then I grew a few inches going into high school, and then my spring season at Severn, my freshman year, I was on JV, and that's kind of when I realized myself. I was like, oh shoot, like I am pretty good. I've gotten a little bigger. I've caught up to some people, put on a little weight. I think I only weighed like 150 pounds maybe, but
at your height now.
Yep. So it was a lot more than I was back in sixth grade and stuff. So I think that was kind of realization there where I was like, all right, well, I think I'm a little better than I thought I was, and there could be opportunity. I really never thought about the college scene too much. I mean, I always have loved Maryland. My grandfather played basketball there. So, I mean, I've always been a Maryland fan, and I never really necessarily imagined I would go to Maryland for lacrosse. It was more so just like, all right, I would love to go to Maryland.
Yeah. You were destined to go there anyway because of your family.
Right.
It was whether or not you were going to play lacrosse.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I played my freshman year, my sophomore year, made varsity, was playing attack, and then sort of shifted to playing more midfield. And that was a good sort of wake up call, I guess, because you go from feeling like, oh, you might be on the side of being one of the bigger guys or stronger guys your freshman year, and then you jump to varsity and you're like ripped right back down the totem pole. And some guys are just fine. Like my good friend Brett Bedard, who played at UNC, he came in, he fit in just fine as a freshman, and did very well and excelled. But for me, it kind of took some time to just like gather myself and really feel out the situation. And then that's when my junior year I came back, and it was like I ran on the field. And I'm like, oh man, like people seemed smaller, it just seemed different.
Yeah.
The game slowed down.
Yep.
And that was when I was like, all right, I definitely have the potential to play somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the whole process was sort of interesting. I mean, I went to a couple of camps, never really had anybody reach out. I sent a ton of clips out, sent a ton of emails out. And then I had one offer from one other Division I school, and then I had another offer from Maryland. And so it was UMBC in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And I had reached out to UMBC. I remember going into my senior year in the fall. I reached out to UMBC, and then they didn't have a spot for me anymore. So I was like,
wow.
Well, I guess I'm gonna go to Maryland. And I definitely had like the whole, I had the whole thing where it's like my dad went there. Like, do I want to go there? This, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And you know, it was really at that point my only opportunity because unfortunately, too, my grades weren't phenomenal. And I hadn't really pursued any other options. Mm-hmm. So I went for it and luckily got in and accepted. And then, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the path I took. And it was different too, because like all the kids these days, like that's all they talk about is like college. And like, I mean, I feel pretty fortunate that none of my friends either were like worried about like, oh man, I need to go to this summer tournament, or like, you know, we need to play in the fall tournaments, or like be playing year round to like be able to go to college.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that was definitely the difference in the generation now versus myself and my friends. Like all of us were kind of committing towards like the end of our junior years and then going into senior years. So, I mean, but like I said before, for this next generation, like you have to play a lot more than I do. The lacrosse is a lot better, and the sport's getting much bigger. So there's a lot more competition.
To be found. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that was basically the path I took there. I played football, played basketball at Severn. You know, those are some awesome times with those teams that I had, and just being able to continue to play football, which I did love a lot. And yeah.
What did you think you got from football that relates to lacrosse?
I think just the toughness and the competitiveness of football is just so different, and it's just a different crowd of people.
Totally.
I mean, I think unfortunately lacrosse does have this, you know, certain stigma or stereotype, which, I mean, any of the best teams that you play on, or, you know, the high level of lacrosse, you're not dealing with those stereotypes. It's unfortunate that a cloud's been put over lacrosse because of certain things that may have happened or whatever it is, or in movies, or, you know, but I mean, the toughness level is there. The athletes are there. Like it's I don't know, sometimes just like falsely represented by previous stereotypes, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I just love football because of just the physical side of it, and I mean, there's nothing more straightforward than just like running in and hitting somebody, and then having them try to hit you and just like head on. I mean, it's not great for the head sometimes, but just the physical side of it. I mean, it's like there's no hiding in football.
Yeah.
It's like either you're going to get involved in the play and you're going to get hit, or you're going to get out of the way and someone's going to score, or, you know, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that definitely, the physical side of it was something that just like stood out to me. And like, I mean, I was pretty good at it. I was a receiver. It was fun and had some good success with it. So that always helps.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure. So a couple injuries later on in the career, but before we jump to college, did your first injury for your foot or ankle start in high school? Was that in high school, or was that after you went to College Park?
I think it might have been my right ankle. I like rolled an ankle one time. I forget if it was right or left. Nothing. I mean, luckily I didn't have really any injuries throughout high school. Just like one, I think my senior year of football, I rolled my ankle and it was like kind of bad, but nothing crazy.
Nothing you couldn't come back from.
So
was it college that kind of took the foot issues to the next level?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So
and mental.
Yeah. Yeah. So it begins, right? So the real deal is the next year. You get to College Park. You're now the little fish in the big pond, right? And everything changes. So you go from high school hero to I'm on the team.
Right.
what's this look like?
Yeah.
You know, are you battling against a ton of talent as upperclassmen, where you're trying to figure out where you can contribute? You know, getting some time at midfield in high school. What that look like freshman year? You know, adversity of trying to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. So coming in, I mean, my expectations weren't really high, but not in a bad way. It was just kind of like, all right, you know, I was told by multiple people, like, you know, I should be able to play at some point. And, you know, so when I came in, it was just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to work really hard and see what happens. So the expectations were just kind of like, just show up and work and see where it takes you. So I just remember the first practice that I ever had at Maryland, and we were in Maryland Stadium, and we had practice. It was like, I don't know, it could have been 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it was. And coach brought us in to a huddle, and he started talking, Coach Tillman, and I thought practice was over. I was like, oh, nice. And then he's like, all right, and then he moved on to the next drill. I was like, okay. So then we go back, we start another drill, did a couple other things, and then he brings everybody in again. I'm like, all right, it's probably over now. And I mean, we're on like, who knows, hour and a half at this point, and then it wasn't over. It's like another drill. So we go back, and we brought it in like 2 more times. I'm like, holy smokes. We finished the first practice, and I was just like, geez, this is pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's like a 3-hour practice. I'm like, oh my, I can't focus for that long.
Yeah.
So that was definitely something that caught my eye right away. And then, I mean, even before that, it was a lot more laid back, just because of the fact in the fall you're not doing as much. But before, like, there's sections of it where you start with just like the run test, which, you know, everybody freaks out about, gets nervous for. And then once you get past that, then it's just individual work. And then we start up with practice. But, I mean, I remember that first practice, and then I just remember, you know, we had a pretty tough fall that year. We would start practice around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. So we would have to be there. We'd watch film every day too. And just, it was a total shift of anything I've ever experienced. It was like going to school and playing a sport. And it's like, do I have a job? Like, what is this? And I mean, it was good. The fall was fine. But kind of what I mentioned before, where I love playing 3 sports, and I definitely loved, you know, the ability to like look forward almost to be like, all right, it's getting to the end of like football season, boom, fresh start, I got basketball. When it got to the end of basketball, fresh start, had lacrosse. This was, okay, well, the fall's over, and that felt like more difficult of a season than I've ever played in my life, but now the actual season starts.
We haven't even started.
So my freshman spring was a little more rough for me, just mentally, to be honest. And I mean, I got to play in a couple of games, played pretty well and here and there, but just like extremely inconsistent. And then you fall into the trap of like, well, you're not playing, so, you know, this is why you're not playing. And you can blame everybody, from the coaches to your teammates to whatever it is. You'll find excuses why you're not producing and why you're not playing, which, you know, when I look back, I'm not necessarily proud of, but I just remember being in that position thinking I was turning into the guy that like would bug me on my high school team or even when I was younger. And it was like, it was a good realization, a good wake up call to kind of see that and call myself out. But, you know, honestly, it didn't necessarily change me right at that moment, but it was definitely a different experience for sure.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a big realization. And a lot of times people don't get that while it's happening. You know, it takes not just months or days, but it could be years later, and you miss your opportunity because you're stuck in that mindset for so long. Flip your mic up real quick just so we can hear that. There you go. Yeah, I remember kind of the same thing growing up, obviously playing at a much lower level. Not as athletic as you then. I don't know about now. No, it's fine. In hoops, like somebody came in and took a position away, somebody got hurt, and then I'm playing in a position that wasn't mine. And I'm a freshman in college. It's like same deal. I'm like, oh, well, that's not my position. I play this position. Right. Well, it's either that or the bench. So you better figure it out. And it took a while. It was a hard pill to swallow. So yeah, totally get that. Kids, hope you're listening to that one. Realize that it's probably on you. It is not on your surrounding, right? And how many times do we hear that with kids, you know, growing up right now? It's tough. So you're a freshman. You get to your spring season. How'd it go?
Well, it was kind of up and down.
Yeah.
Got to play every once in a while. Played well in some instances, but then would never follow up with, like, if I played well once, I wouldn't play well the next time. So it was just I would just say it was very inconsistent. Didn't do as well in school. My dad was not too happy with me at the end of that semester. And I mean, neither was Coach Tillman. So that was definitely tough. And then, but you know, whatever, it happens. And
so you were a freshman.
Yeah, right. That's why they have freshman forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so I coming into my sophomore year, you know, it was a good opportunity to reset in the fall. Did really well in the fall. I had a theme of doing very well in the fall, when of course it matters, but it's like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter because you need to do well in the spring too.
Yeah.
That's the most important time of the year. Did really well in the fall, and then just was like so in the spring again. School was okay, but just sort of the same roller coaster ride almost. And then got into my junior year and had the fall started up, was playing really well, just kind of had a sort of a different mentality coming into the whole year and everything. And then spring came, and I'd never broken a bone ever playing any sports or anything. The spring came, it was like our first practice in January, and I was just backpedaling, do something we do every day, backpedaling, turned to plant to run, and just planted my left foot, and just felt like my foot just like shifted, like the bone just like shifted or something. And so I just kind of limped off the field, and was just standing there like, what the heck was that? Had our trainer come take a look at it. Didn't seem too bad. Got x-rays, got an MRI. We weren't able to really see anything until I went to the doctor. And then I went to the doctor on like right around January 15th and sat in there, and he walked in, was like, you have a fracture in your second metatarsal. You have to get surgery. We're going to send you to the person who's set up for surgery. You're going to get it done next week. And I was just like, wow, what just happened? Yeah. So ended up getting a screw put into my foot. It was January 26th of 2015. And that was a very long recovery process. I mean, I was in a boot. You don't really realize how much you use your feet, even though you're walking on it every day. But luckily it wasn't my right foot, so I could still drive. But I was on crutches. It was like crutches, non-weight bearing for, I think it was like 8 weeks.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah. And then right when I would get like the cutoff, I would try to walk or do something, and it would just push me back even more. But it was 8 weeks non-weight bearing, and then it was 4 weeks with crutches, and I could like walk with my boot, which that got pushed to like 6, and then it was just the boot, and that got pushed again. So it turned out, I mean, I was in a boot. We ended up going to the national championship that year, and I was in a boot on Memorial Day, so May 25th. I was still in the boot. So that was definitely a long process, and from now working with you, it's like you realize how much that can screw you up as far as the rest of your body. And then I ended up getting surgery again to get the pin taken out in August. That was more of a minor thing. Didn't really play too much in the fall, just recovering from that. And then went into my senior year.
Last chance, right?
Yeah. But that was I don't know if you call it my normal senior year before my redshirt year. Because of the year in 2015, I was able to redshirt that year. And so that season went pretty well until the very end. I was playing a lot better. Wasn't, necessarily great, but started to kind of find my stride towards the end of the year. And then our team was playing really well, got to the championship, and we ended up losing North Carolina. And I gave up the first goal, and then was a part of the next like 3 goals, and then didn't step back on the field. And so that was a tough one for sure.
Lose a couple nights sleep after that for the off season, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that side ended.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, with the foot, you don't realize it at the time. You know, when you're an athlete and you're in the game, you think, all right, boots on, I'm hurt. Boots off, I'm better.
Right.
And I start today.
Yeah.
And the lingering effects have, really kind of been with you ever since. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So give us the senior year or the redshirt year rundown, and then we'll dive into who's Nick now, what happened after college, MLL, and go down that path.
Sounds good. I'll have to give credit to my dad for the majority of everything that happened after, because all my friends and all the guys that were seniors besides one, John Garino, they were all graduating and left, and I came back. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Ended up coming back to school. Needed to come back to school anyways. And so had the fall. The fall was probably just the fall wasn't the best time for me. I think just kind of my mindset wasn't really right. Wasn't really playing well lacrosse. Just dealing with some other things too. And then I came back over winter break and got dinner with my dad. I was like, I don't think I want to play. Like, this is just isn't what I think it's going to be. Like, I just want to start working. Like, I know I'll be fine if I start working now. Like, just kind of try to go back to that. Like, oh, I just want to change and go to something else.
Yeah.
Thinking everything would be just fine. And then, my dad told me, he's like, it'll be the worst decision you ever make. And he's like, you never get this opportunity back. And once again, it would be the worst decision you could ever make. So, kind of hit home for me there, and just knowing, what he's been through, what he experienced. And I was like, you know what, probably should listen to him. I listen to him a lot, so sometimes not so much. But I was like, you know what, I'll go back and do this. And, the spring season started. I was not even in the top. I wasn't even playing short stick D-midi when the season started. I was playing long pole and some close defense, which I was okay at, but had some pretty funny moments in practice. And finally just was right when we were about to play North Carolina. It was a week before, and obviously first time playing them since the championship last year. I just went to our defensive coordinator, Kevin Connery, at the time, and I was like, look, we had talked about how they wanted the short sticks to play better, and I was like, I just kind of want a shot to go back to playing what I'm used to playing. And credit to him, he let me switch back, and from there kind of just ended up taking over the second spot with Isaiah, and ran with it. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Successful season, felt good there.
Yep.
Played well. Any lingering foot issues that bothered you during that season?
Not really until like the championship, the Final Four and semifinal and championship game. The Foxborough had re-turfed the whole field, and it turned into like a turf beach. It was just turf pellets galore. And that did not feel good at all on my feet. So that was interesting, but was able to just kind of put that to the side for for something much bigger. But yeah, so that was that season definitely changed the course of, my mentality and really just like my life.
So safe to say Dad was right.
Yeah.
Glad you listened to him that time.
Right.
I know it's hard at that age, but sometimes our parents get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So went out on top.
Yeah. So
that's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't get any better than that. Win a national championship after the comeback season. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But then after that, it's like, all right, what's next?
Right.
So graduate, we're in the real world. We got the MLL. There's no PLL at the time.
Yep.
Right? Do I work? Do I get my adult life started? Do I still have interest in lacrosse? What's going through your mind after you got done partying?
Yeah.
Which we won't talk about.
It started with, when I was thinking I wasn't really going to play lacrosse, or I wasn't really sure if I was coming back, I was going to like job interviews and stuff over the winter, doing like commercial real estate, looking at different spots. Went up to New York. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is unreal. And then once I really started to focus on lacrosse, I just basically said, I'll figure that stuff out later. So school ended. I was, fortunate enough to be picked up by the Bay Hawks. And at that point, just moved back home, weather's awesome, summertime in Annapolis, you know, it's a good spot. So just went forward with lacrosse, and then was doing some interviews and stuff to try and figure that out. My goal was to start something up in August or later in the fall. You know, I was lucky enough to be able to live at home for a little bit. And yeah, but so that first summer was mainly with the Bay Hawks and playing lacrosse.
What's that, 27? Is that 2017?
Yeah, fall of 2017.
Okay, got it.
So,
cool.
Yeah, and it was good. I mean, I got drafted. The draft that year was after our semifinal game. And then didn't even expect to get picked up, got picked up. And then, you know, when we went, I got picked up with Isaiah was picked up by the Bayhawks, Colin. Trying to think if there's anybody else. I think those are the two guys from our team. And so
that's pretty cool to continue playing with them.
Yeah, it was awesome. And there's a bunch of Maryland guys that were already on that team. So, and luckily it's right in Annapolis. So when we started up there, Isaiah and Colin dressed right away. And then I sat for the first 4 games. And, you know, I mean, it was another experience of going from being at the top, you can't get much higher than winning the championship, and starting, and then just you're back down again.
Yeah.
And so just kind of put in the work, just kind of being ready for an opportunity. And then Brian Reese, the coach at the time, and Dave Cottle was the general manager, and Brendan Kelly too. They gave me the nod to play in my first game was against the Florida Launch. It was at home, and played well, and then played for the rest of the year. And we ended up, because we were 1 game short of making the playoffs that year. But what was a big benefit for me was the fact that I started to play a little bit of pole in college. That turned into an opportunity to be more diverse in the pro game, because there's only 19 guys who were dressing at that time.
Yeah.
So I ended up playing long pole midi, which I'd never really played in the game before. And then the following year was playing close defense and starting at close defense, which I'd never started at close defense at any point in my life. So
why not start out at the pro level, right? Yeah.
Right. It was so that was pretty interesting.
How'd you guys wind up that year?
So the following year we lost in the semifinal to Denver. They ended up winning the championship. That was tough. There's no excuses there. But
that was 2018, right?
Yep, 2018.
Yeah. And then I met you after that. Re-met you in your adult life.
At the start, you met me in the beginning of 2018 because
that's right. Yeah.
The beginning of 2018, I was playing basketball with my buddy Jack. Shout out Jack Crabtree. We went out.
He just crossed you up.
Yeah,
right?
we went out one night to play, and it was like freezing cold. I don't even know what we were doing. We were like wearing full, just bundled up. It was in, I think it was like late January, and the season started in March. And just was like driving to the basket. I stepped on his foot, completely my fault, and my ankle just like went down to the ground. And I was like, this is not good. It swelled up like a softball. Thankfully, I was so able to go to my trainer, Anthony Binyarko at Maryland. He was able to help me out a little bit. And then that's when I got in contact with you through the betters. And and that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to have to try to figure this out and get right for the season, because it's coming up in 2 weeks, or it was like a month and a half, I think, at that point. We started March 25th. So that started the season off in an interesting spot.
Yeah. You didn't have a leg.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So getting back to like your original injury, sorry to cut you off.
You're good.
But so we had the foot surgery from way back when, which we thought was kind of behind us, right?
Right.
And then you sprain your ankle really nasty and bring that back. And as we get deeper, right, and Anthony's working on you, doing a great job, you know, you're in here to like get right quick and play in the MLL and have a great season. And I mean, how did it feel when I'm like, Nick, like your ankle doesn't move? You don't have any mobility.
I was like,
I don't know how you're walking, let alone playing lacrosse at this level, right? So we had to go like back to the beginning to try to clean that joint up to get some long-term development out of that thing, so you can actually move from your ankle, which is pretty helpful when you play defense and run and jump and cut and all that stuff. Right. So like during that season, I mean, from my perspective, and I wasn't going to tell you any of this during, right? Because the worst thing you do is recommend ego in a sport. But during, I'm thinking like every night, you know, whatever I need to do to just like keep you healthy as you're taped up. Right. braced up to get through that year, but you're really playing on a club foot like the whole season.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's just survival. Like, let's not make this ankle worse. We got to work like crazy to get some range back because your ankle literally didn't move.
Yeah.
You had zero dorsiflexion,
Right.
so you couldn't squat, you couldn't jump, couldn't do whatever. And what we also noticed as we got into the weight room, right? Sorry to dime you out like this, but when you don't bend your ankle,
Right.
you can't train your legs the right way,
Right.
and somehow you snuck through the weight room at Maryland for a couple of years, right?
Only benching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the tailor had to fix your shirts and pants and all that because we didn't have any legs.
Yeah.
But then after that, so you survived the season, right? We took the L at the end, but survived the season. And then we're back for 2019. Got a whole off season of training.
Yep.
Cleaned up the ankle sprain. Dug deeper, tried to undo some stuff with the foot. Going back to Anthony, huge resource the whole time too, right?
Yes.
Scraping your ankle every like 3 days, right? Getting dry needled from PT here and doing all that stuff. And then we start out the 2019 year. It's like, okay, we got a little bit of an engine here. We have some legs that work, and we got an ankle that bends a little bit, so we can now jump and run and all that.
Right.
So teams coming together, right? You got the couple guys from your team in Maryland. You guys are gelling, playing pretty well together. Take me through that year, like emotion, struggle. You know, how you're splitting time with people and how'd all that go?
Yeah, that was it was an interesting year. That's when the PLL started. So you have the two sides of lacrosse. And for me, at the time, I mean, I'd never gotten a call from anybody at the PLL anyways saying something was going on. But
were you happy about that? Yeah, we had some good conversations in here.
But I mean, I wasn't in a position where personally I like to pride myself on the loyalty I have, and Brendan Kelly and, you know, those guys at the Bay Hawks who, you know, drafted me when I didn't even need to get drafted. I felt like it was sort of my part to be able to continue supporting them and play with them, and stick with, you know, a couple of the younger guys that were hanging there with me. So I think it was definitely an interesting boat to be in. And, you know, it's just the two sides of the two leagues. And, you know, it's great that they're coming back together now, because it sucked, to be honest. It was like I would have loved to be able to play one of their teams. I'm sure, you know, they would love to play one of us too to shut us up. But
a lot of smack talking that year, right? Yeah.
It was just interesting. It was good and bad for lacrosse, because it just kind of created, like, you know, some tension that didn't really need to be there. But, you know, obviously that league's done very well and very successful, and, you know, wish them nothing but the best. But so starting into that year, it was fun. I mean, we had our good core group of guys, and just like that team was awesome every year that I played on it. Even the guys who had left for the PLL, they're all great guys. Had good relationships with all of them. But that was a really fun year, especially playing with Brian Phipps, who, I mean, I grew up watching him, looked up to him my whole life. So he'd always come up a little bit short and never had gotten a ring. So winning the championship with him was really cool. And then even, I mean, playing with Steele Stanwyck, Matt Abbott, CJ Costabile, I mean, Jesse Bernhardt. I could probably forgetting some guys, but just like I grew up watching those guys. Like I remember watching Matt Abbott when he was playing with Syracuse when they won the game in the Final Four championship. And I mean, I was at the beach like watching that game, and to think that I would play with him was just, I never in my life would have thought that. It's more so credit to him for being as good as he is and sticking around. Yeah. And then Brian, you know, going watching his games, watching him play at Severn. CJ, I remember watching him win the game in overtime for Duke and off the face-off in the national championship. Like, I mean, Steele Stanwyck is funny. My grandmother, when he was in high school, was like, he's such a good guy. She saw him do like an interview or something. I was like, whatever, he's going to Virginia. But it was really cool to just get to know those guys and be able to play with them. I mean, they're all great names in lacrosse, and be able to win a championship with those guys was just to see, you know, how excited they were was really cool.
Now, at the same time as you're playing and training, right, and it's at the time kind of a full-time job for you. Yeah. You're training with one of your buddies from college, right, and here and out on the field, and we're getting after it. Yeah. Who was in the MLL and then jumped to the PLL. Yeah. Right? Right. So I know you guys had conversations throughout the whole process about PLL starting up, who's going, who's staying, and all that. Like, how was that with Don? Yeah. How was your, you know, kind of on the field and off the field relationship with him as you guys were working together?
Yeah, I mean, Matt's one of my best friends. Known him, we lived together our freshman year in college. So known him for a long time, and I mean, it wasn't necessarily like anybody who was going to the PLL. It wasn't like, oh, you're making the wrong decision. I think it was just more so like, I would love to play with you. Like, hey, you should come check this out. If there was opportunities to play together, but it was a lot of unknowns for both sides. I mean, we weren't sure where either league was going. And I mean, with Matt, I mean, he's one of my best friends, so our relationship was great. Work out together and just kind of get ready for both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like you didn't know if you were gambling or not, staying or going.
Right.
Yeah, it was a crazy time.
It's
we had a lot of good conversations that during early morning training sessions that year.
Yeah. I knew if I was going down with the Bayhawks. So that's how it had to go.
Well, you're a development guy. You're a loyalty guy, like you said. And you, at the time, thought it was not a loyal decision to leave, which I totally get and fully respect. And I think you made the right decision. Yeah. Right? And your dad didn't have to tell you to. Yeah. All right, so that's 2019. So, and on the top again. So we start 2020. So 2020 is a shit show for everyone, right? So COVID hits. You're in here training, but prior to the season, and you correct me if I'm wrong, all right, you're turning into a working man now, okay? And I think you made a decision that you were not going to play in 2020, right? So hung up the jersey, grinding at work, and COVID hits, right? And I think by that time, you're still working out. Yeah. But we switched. We did the 180 from I need to be able to move and play on the field to I want to be an Under Armour model or whatever it was at the time, right?
That was, that was never a thought, but.
So let's bring another college teammate into the mix of this, right? So the Brozo story.
Yeah. So
where's Brozo come from? How's he get in the mix? And then you were his wingman for a year.
Yeah. So this will have to go back. I mean, this was in.
It was like fall, right?
Yeah. With him, it started in the spring of 2019. He called me. He wants to go in the military, so he called me.
And not just any branch.
Yeah. Right. Wants to go to the top. Wants to go to the top, and I don't know if we can talk.
Oh yeah, maybe we can't talk about.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I might just say military.
Oh yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Cool.
And so.
And if he hears that we did this, he'll probably come in.
Right. I'll beat his ass. So in 2019, he reached out and he was like, I want to go into the military. And a lot of guys have moved to Annapolis because there's some good resources here for that. So he was like, do you have any spot to live? And of course, I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, you can live with us. Meanwhile, it's like we have no room. He would have to sleep in my room. We'd have to get an air mattress or something, which I just didn't think about. Yeah. So luckily, he was able to get a living situation squared away right in Eastport. And so he moved in, and we really hadn't connected too much until because I was a senior when he was a sophomore, I believe. And I mean, we didn't. Obviously, our team hangs out, but we weren't always hanging out with each other. Didn't live together. So then in the fall, we got connected, and more so, and just started, hanging out, working out together. Came and started working out with you. So started to jump into military workouts with him. I guess I got roped into that when I decided I wasn't going to play lacrosse anymore.
Well, you can't walk in this door without training for something.
Right. Yeah.
You can't just train to be a bodybuilder.
Exactly.
Sorry,
and so towards the end of 2019. I mean, you had brought up the event you were supposed to do with Al DeCaceres because he always talked about, or he's always does his events for people. And, I was like, that's cool, but you're nuts. I'm not going to do a marathon through a mountain range.
It was interesting how we timed that too.
Yeah,
had the whole booth set up.
Right.
As I called you.
I came in when you had your trail running shoe demo going on for the event. Yeah. And Al was here. And he's like, oh, cool. So you're done playing lacrosse? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, nice. Sounds great. So you should do something.
So to give some background on that, let me stop you for a second because that's where we're going to go next. Yeah. So a buddy of mine started this nonprofit, Difference Makers, and he had this event. He had done a couple of them in the past, and I think they went to the Grand Canyon the year prior, and basically you raise money for the charity of your choice, and he puts together the concept of the event, right? It's a small group that raises a good amount of money because the activity is not walk around, do a 5K in town. It's a big deal. Yeah. So, I'm just doing my subliminal messaging to you along the way, hey, Nick, now that you're not playing lax, you're in shape. We should do this thing. Yeah. So we originally had the trail run planned.
Uh-huh.
So it was a 22-mile trail run, hike, whatever, down in Virginia. Big event, like 8,000 feet of vertical, like an all-day deal. And we had plenty of time to train for it then, right? It was the fall, I think? Or was that summer?
It was towards... No. It was the event that was towards the end of 2019 when we were talking about.
Yeah, the event was going to be in the spring of 2020.
Spring of 2020.
Late spring, right?
Yeah, spring.
So we talk about that, kind of get ready, doing it, put some stuff out there on social media. We each pick a foundation. Which one did you pick?
And so I was doing it for Parkinson's for my Uncle Brian.
Yeah.
And Brian Adam, he was diagnosed in 2013. And he had to get the deep brain stimuli surgery. Sorry. The deep brain stimuli surgery, I think it was called. Hopefully I'm not wrong there. And it was a 7-hour surgery. He got it done in San Francisco. And they basically go into his brain and then put these little things in his chest here so they can help with his balance. And so obviously a big deal. And the whole idea to raise money for Parkinson's was, I thought that would be awesome. And then, kind of figured, is there something that's going to match the time frame of the surgery, which the run was supposed to be like a 7-hour thing.
Well, so let me stop you there. So run gets canceled, right? So COVID comes around. We got Brozo training with you for the military. So we're juggling that. He's getting ready to hopefully be a stud and make it through his path. We're training for the trail event, right? I'm with you. And then COVID hits and we get shut down on whatever that was, Friday, March something. So we, talked to Al a week later. And by the way, like, you don't miss a beat, right? And this is what I think a lot of people need to hear, right? Like, life goes on. Your uncle's obviously struggling. You're doing this thing for him, right? I mean, you don't need any more motivation than that. So Friday we shut down. Monday morning, I think you're knocking on my basement door and we're down the pain cave, like just making workouts as horrific as we can with 10-pound dumbbells and ropes and stuff, right?
I feel bad for your family.
They'll be scarred forever from you and Brozo. So we call out a week later, event gets canceled, we figure out what to do, and it's going to be now like shift to a COVID-19, support the front lines, medical staff and all that. Raise money and get a bunch of people to do their own thing because we were all, supposed to be social distancing at that time, and we were, for sure, outside, masks on, and do your own thing. Well, you already had raised a good amount of money, and obviously this thing, hits close to home for you more so than probably most of the people that were doing it. So we stay on track, right? And you're still doing your event, and then we just twist it from Virginia. Everybody goes there to our own thing local. Right? So we're in the backyard, you and Brozo, right? My kid's swing set is still scarred, right? I don't know how many thousands of pull-ups we did on that thing. We're running around in the backyard with a duct tape bag of sand. And getting you tuned up for your event. So tell us about the event that we kind of made up and planned here, which I think was harder than the original event by far, right?
So at the time, LJ Uri, one of my good friends, and then Brozo was working out with us. We had been like swimming and stuff in the water for whatever reason. LJ's a big Wim Hof guy. He's a huge fan.
So by swimming, you mean you were jumping in the cold water in Spot Creek.
Right, yes.
And then you get out.
Spot Creek, Well, we progressed. So we started with jumping in January, and we would just sit in there, and then we get to like 5 minutes, get to 10 minutes, and then by the time March hit, we were just swimming across the bottom part of Spot Creek, swimming across and back, and so that was just that was there. Wasn't really supposed to be anything. And then
became attached later on.
And then so when the whole event and the whole fact that the first one was going to take like 7 hours, or the goal was to be 7 hours, it was a little unrealistic to make it in that time. I just was like, well, just trying to figure out where else we could do it. So when you brought up Bacon Ridge, we'd gone out and done some trail runs there to prepare for the actual first event. That's when we kind of realized, like, all right, well, maybe we can just do it here and hit the same amount or close amount of vertical, and how far we have to run and do that. So for the marathon side of things, it needed to be a marathon, and I think we hit like 5,500. I could be wrong, but if my watch is right, we were right around there for that. And then LJ was the one with the swimming. I don't even know how it came up. Like, I love to swim. I love to swim in the summertime, but I never in my life was on the swim team or like was doing anything like that. I don't know. I really don't even know how it happened. It was like, I think it was once, because LJ was on sort of back and forth, like whether he was going to do it or not. Meanwhile, he'd go like put bricks in his backpack and run with Vans on and crush like 15 miles and be like, I'm ready. Like, what? So he was like, well, why don't we just throw the swim in there? So we were like, okay, the combo of being able to add something else to take more time, because we knew the run was going to take us 7 hours. And then also we were like, I wanted to finish like somewhere near my uncle, because he couldn't.
The duration of his surgery.
Yeah. And I didn't know if he was going to be able to come out to the trail, or like what the deal was with COVID and everything. So I was just like, well, if we swim to his house, then he has no choice, because he'll be there.
Yeah.
So we decided that we would swim from the Sherwood Forest Pier to the Linstead dock. And after we ran, which I've talked to a couple of people who had done Ironmans and whatever, and they're like, why are you swimming after you run? Like, it's the dumbest thing ever. You're going to cramp up, like, blah, blah. I'm like, well, it's the only option we had to finish, like, and have my uncle be there.
You started at like 5 in the morning on the run. Yeah. So, I mean, you can't, you can, but 3 in the morning swimming.
Yeah,
I believe
would
that's
just be very dangerous.
Yeah.
So we were like, all right, so we're going to do it. So we started training, obviously ramped up a lot. And thanks to you, we had a plan and knew what the heck we could do in order to at least put ourselves in a position to not completely fail this thing. And I mean, to go back to right when it got canceled, I had already raised like $3,000.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, shoot, we have to do something. I can't just like tell these people thanks and just send the money. So when we made all that shift, and then we were able to announce like what we were going to do, and the math seemed right from what you were saying too. We were like, all right, so we'll finish the run probably 5.5 to 6 hours. The swim should be like an hour and a half, because I think we messed up on the mileage a little bit. And swimming across just open water in a river is a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, I guess.
Yeah.
So we kind of just ended up going for it that way. And then I guess
why not?
Yeah.
But you had people out there cheering you on. We got the paper involved.
Yeah.
Do you remember how much money you guys totally raised?
Yeah. So my cousin Elizabeth Adams, she ended up doing an event later in the year, doing a marathon. She's been living in London for the past 2 years, I believe. Yeah. So she was supposed to do one there. The London Marathon got canceled. Ended up being able to work something out, and her friends helped her out. But between the two of us, we raised, I believe, over $80,000.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
So it was really cool. I mean, it was just cool to see all the people that reached out that are affected by it, and like just like really anything. You don't necessarily know who's going through what or who is affected by similar things. Like, I mean, David Goggins has a great quote. It's like everybody, I won't quote it correctly, but he talks about how everybody, says they have their problems or these problems, and nobody like knows how I feel. And he's like, you could throw a rock to somebody with worse problems than you. And, really doing that event made me realize like there's a lot of people in this area that, whether it's their fathers who've had it or whatever, relatives in any way, shape, or form, that have been affected by it. And it was just cool to be able to have an impact on the whole research side. Awesome. And then I don't know if we should dive into the actual event or what.
Well, let me go this route. So, sports teach you so many lessons, and we talk about this all the time, so I know we agree on all this stuff. The morals and values and lessons learned through sports are incredible. I mean, talking about just like pointing fingers that it's everybody else's fault to owning it up. It's why, in my opinion, everybody should play at whatever level they can. Yeah. But this event is kind of a different animal, but values and lessons learned through this, along with just the physical suffering that you guys put yourself through, in the middle of a time where, I hate to say it, but most of the country's sitting on their ass just waiting for somebody to help them.
Right.
And I'm not talking about getting COVID. That obviously that's a real deal. But
Right.
sitting in their house bored, you know, eating crap, drinking crap, and you're out grinding with the buddies that you roped in to do this thing to raise all this money. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but I got a bunch of just like texts and emails to me saying it was so refreshing to just hear and see positive news, because when we were in like mid-spring, we didn't know what was going on. Right. I mean, everybody was locked in their house. We were still wiping down boxes that were delivered from Amazon.
Right.
Like, we didn't know how serious it was. And then to be able to do that, and for people to like look on Facebook or Instagram and say, no way, these guys raised 80 grand, just swam down the river, you know, and there's nothing positive on the news. It was just so cool. It was just well timed. Yeah. It was awesome. Right. So like, looking back, what'd you get out of that mentally, and how can that relate to sport success and, you know, adversity and stuff like that? Because I want to hear about the next year too, which was obviously a cluster as well.
Yeah.
But like, what do you get from an event like that? And do you wish, looking back, that you as a youth athlete would have done something? I'm not saying it needs to be a marathon and swim in the river, but something that took you to that place mentally and physically to help you gain some value earlier in your career. And do you think that would have had an impact on sports?
Yeah, I think as far as what I got out of it, for like, not in a personal way, more so like with my family, it was very cool to just see how many people supported my uncle, and how many people had such good things to say about him. And like, he's a great guy. I've known he's a great guy. But to hear it from a lot of different people and get the support for him, I think was really cool. And to do something for him when he's in a scenario that it sucks. I mean, it is what it is. It sucks. It's really hard, but I've never been around him where he's moody or complaining. I'm sure my aunt is around him when he is, or my cousins. But, you know, luckily for me, when I'm around him, he's always, you know, he's always smiling, and I've never heard him complain one time. So for that side of, you know, what I took out of it, it was a life lesson, like shock. What he was doing before, like, shocked me. So it was kind of like, wow. And then having all these people who supported him and supported the disease and everything was just eye-opening. I mean, personally, it was by far the hardest thing I've ever done mentally, physically. Like, even the training for it, like, you just tap into, and like, I know there's people out there who run hundreds of miles. They do a lot of marathons.
Yeah, like, that's what they do for a living.
Right, yeah. Like,
this wasn't in your forte.
Right, and it's not like boasting or anything. It's just like, I'd never ran over 8 miles in my life before March of 2020. And I'd never swam a quarter mile in my life, let alone in 56-degree water. And never really done trail running or anything like that, which I realized you can easily roll an ankle and fall on your face, which I did in the first 5 minutes of the run. So I definitely know there's people out there too that are probably like, oh, you ran a marathon, like, it's not that big a deal. It's like, well, it was 5.5 hours of running, and it wasn't a normal
what they're going to say is, marathon took you 5.5 hours.
Right.
It's like, come on, it's hills, roots, it's a trail.
So personally, I mean, the mindset that you get into, I can't even really describe it. It's just like, it's relatable to sports, because it reminded me of when I was playing well and like really doing what I should be doing lacrosse wise. You get into a point where it's just, you're reactive. Like, you don't think about anything. You're not thinking about if you're tired. You're not thinking about people in the stands. You're not thinking about what could go wrong. It's just kind of like, you just go. That's how this was. It was like, you just hit a point, really running wise, that you're like, well, I'm going to do this. And another Goggins quote, he's like, once your mind makes up what it's going to do, like, your body just kind of adapts. And not saying necessarily I could just go out and go do that whole event again without training for it.
But there's another level there physically that your mind doesn't allow you to get to. Right.
And a good like point on that too, the week before or 2 weeks before, LJ and I did like a test run for it. So we ran 14 miles in the trail, felt fine. and we went to swim from my aunt and uncle's house down to like the dock by Severn, which was a mile. It was there and back was a mile. And I swam there, and I got out, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, there's no way I can swim 2.2 miles. I couldn't even swim a half a mile. I was freezing. Like, I was having headaches. I was like, this isn't going to work. And LJ was flying. He's like a fish. But I was like, after I did that, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so then, and I thought I would crush the run. And then going in 2 weeks later, when I hit the 14th mile, I like started feeling pain in my leg, which came out of nowhere. And it's like, are you kidding me? So whatever, was able to like fight through that, and then got to the swim and was able to finish it. But it was like, it's wild what you can do when your mind is just like locked in on it. Your
brain just accepts that it's going to hurt for a long time.
Right.
And if you can, most people don't ever get to that point though, right?
Yeah, right.
So when things get uncomfortable, they usually stop.
Right.
And sports, I shouldn't classify all sports, but like field sports, right? It's about like explosive play, get in, do something technical, work real hard, get a sub, come out, regroup, what's the strategy, back in and do it again. It's not like the duration of being in your own head and that suffering.
Right.
That doesn't end. Like, that's not in field sports, right? It's
right.
just a different animal.
Yeah.
And it's equally as hard. It's just different. So you haven't been in that place before, right?
Yeah,
where like,
never.
I don't know what this pain's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never.
It's that thermostat reset, right?
Yeah.
So after that event, new outlook on life a little bit, new outlook on daily discomfort.
Yeah.
Oh, my coffee didn't have enough creamer in it.
Right.
Stuff like that doesn't bother you, right?
Yeah. I definitely realized that, number one, I can accomplish more than I thought I could, whether that's physically or mentally. And like, that's the whole piece, like the running side and that whole event was just so much more mental than I ever thought I could comprehend or even handle with my ADD. But yeah, it definitely changed me as a person, and definitely my outlook on life too. Just realizing,
it was awesome to watch, like just from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Seriously, because we see people suffer in a good way all the time.
Right.
And, it's funny, like you can track your progress with weights, you can track your progress with cardio, but you can't objectively track like somebody's mental fortitude.
Right.
And it takes something big in order to take a big step in that direction. And, you're one of many people to kind of go through that process. To watch it from the outside is so cool. It's like, all right, Nick's a man now.
Yeah.
Like he's there.
You also realize that there's people that just do so much more too. Like, I mean, it got me into like Iron Man type stuff and looking at that. And then you just realize like, oh, sick, Nick. Like you ran and you swam a little bit. It's like, go bike another, 50, 100 miles after it. Yeah. And then there's some other stuff like involved. So it's cool to, it's just humbling in many different ways. You think like you're an athlete, so you could be able to crush like this, that, and the other. And in reality, it was humbling, and it was gained a lot of respect for people that just run a lot, because I never was into that, even playing sports. But just realizing that there's so many different things out there that people do that, are very hard. And you have no idea until you experience it.
Yeah. You got to go through it.
Yeah.
Well, I know I need to give you a weekend, so I'm going to get through a couple other things, and then I'll cut us loose.
Right.
So that's 2020. We finished the event in the spring. Right. And word about Lacrosse, kind of already retired, but maybe there's some interest. I know at that point you want to just do anything that's hard, right? Because you're all fired up about the event. You're in a new place. Talk to me about the 2020 season, like how that turn around. How do we get into that like mad dash to the start line for 2020 season, and then we throw together this, what was it, 2 weeks, a week? Yeah, it's basically like 4 days and a weekend.
Well, I was told that they're going to have like their bubble season or whatever in Annapolis, and I mean, they asked me to play, and I was like, well, it's in Annapolis, it's a week and a half long, like why not? So decided to do it. And it was definitely different. It was a unique experience for everybody. And went through it, played okay, not great. and then got to we played 5 games. I mean, it was like 130 degrees on the field, just like brutally hot. And then Friday, we played one more game, and then Saturday we all had gotten tested for COVID, and unfortunately, I don't even know if I can. Doesn't matter if I say it. Yeah. Okay.
No. So, pretty good portion of the population. Right now, so that's okay.
So so Friday we played our last game, and then Saturday morning everybody who was left, there's 4 teams left in the playoffs, all got tested for COVID, and so I tested positive, a couple other guys tested positive, and then so our whole team backed out and left, and then that's how that ended. So then I was stuck in a hotel with COVID, and it was at the time where it was kind of like, if you had COVID, it's like, how did you get, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. We didn't know it. Yeah, we didn't know it.
Yeah. And I'm sure people, who knows what people had to say about that, or if they were like, he's, going out or doing this, that, and the other. I have no idea where I got it from, and I would love to know. But it was weird, just like this whole past year and a half has been. It's like, I have no idea where I got it from. I have no idea how only like a small number of guys had it, and how I was one of those guys. But that was, being stuck in a room for 2 weeks is not fun. So got that, and then I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't know if that's how my lacrosse career is going to end.
After going out on top in college and MLL the season before, it's like leaves a sour taste in the mouth, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, after that, just kind of shifted, got back to life, and then started to focus on work.
So let's dive into that, right? So, I mean, what a time to take on a new venture.
Yeah.
Right? So, economy's doing what it's doing. You're kind of hanging up the jersey for a second time, I guess, right?
Yep.
Make the decision to dive into work, back to being a Under Armour model or whatever. Right? And you start your own company. I mean, a little more adversity, right?
Yeah.
Why not start it at the hardest possible time in history?
Yeah.
So how's that going?
Yep.
Obviously, in adult life now, grinding on that. Responsibilities are different, weeks demanding, still training. We'll get back into the lacrosse piece in a second. But, what's the name of your company? What do you do?
Yep.
And how's the grind on that? Because that's just as mentally fatiguing as sports, right?
Yeah.
If not more.
It's awesome. So Modus Solutions is our company. MODUS, it stands for MO, Modus Operandi, particular way or method of doing something. And so me, my brother-in-law, John McGovern, and my good friend Jack Crabtree, we broke off from our previous company and just saw an opportunity and sort of went for it. We do all copiers, printers, full service supplies, the full deal. And we do the sales for them as well, leasing, whatever it may be. We try to take it on. So we started up. We opened our doors October 1st of 2020, and I've been in the industry coming up on 4 years now, and I mean I just love the ability to work with really anybody anywhere. I have worked with all different companies, companies across the country, different locations, wherever it may be, and it's for a product. A printer, people are like, printers, people still use those, they do, and they use a lot of them, and nobody thinks about them until they break. So for me, or they're out of toner or whatever it may be. So for me, just it seemed right. I had enjoyed it a lot for the past 3 years, and just decided it was time for a fresh start. And the 3 of us broke off and went after it. So the first,
awesome,
I don't know, you think like when you're young, and I'm still young, but like I'm just thinking of myself 6 months ago or 8 months ago. It's like, you know this, that, and the other. You'll figure it out as you go, which you do. But I've just realized from this short time of having a company, it's just every day you're learning something new. And every day you're just experiencing different things, and it changes, relationships and how you work with people. But just really the whole grind of like running a business is so familiar to me in the like what it takes, I guess you could say, to sports, to doing the event that we did. Like, things are never going to go as planned, ever. I mean, obviously when you do a good job and you run a good company, they go as they're supposed to go. But just being like the mental side of things, with the run, like getting into a state where it's like, okay, you don't get phased by things that might happen to you. If you all of a sudden feel injured, all of a sudden you're swimming in the middle of the river and every single muscle in your legs is cramping up and your dad's on the boat, like yelling at you. Yeah.
Like, I can figure out this fire to put out work today because I was there.
So it's just like going through those experiences and just understanding, like, it's going to be very hard. Your life is going to change. Like, you have to make lifestyle changes if you want to be successful in what you're doing. But I think for me personally, that's what I want to do. Like, I enjoy being in those spots because, luckily I've been able to accomplish some things that I didn't really view possible in myself. And what I try to do is almost like, look back at myself as a younger kid and think of all the things I would think about. Like, I could do this, that, and the other. And then when you get older, you start to be like, oh, I can't do this, or because you just get like scared of what could happen or what could go wrong. And so that's kind of the mentality that we've taken into this. And 2021 has been great to us. We have a solid number of clients now, growing every month, and just trying to slowly keep our foot in the door and then kick it down.
Love it. So you've been grinding at work, putting in hours, right? So you made the parallel to sports, and a lot of similarities. The difference is you thought that 3-hour practice was long. I mean, you don't have an off time. You don't clock out now. You own it, right? So what's it been now? 3 months, maybe not 2 months since you got the itch back, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So let's end it with the last lax chapter. We'll see where it goes. But MLL dissolves, right, a while back. And PLL's left standing. And a lot of your old teammates kind of wanted to migrate over, right? And you got the itch. I mean, I think it's safe to like call you the Brett Favre of lacrosse now, right?
I don't know if I'm going to the Hall of Fame for lacrosse.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Depends who's voting.
Right. But yeah, it's when the merge happened, just kind of had that motivation again to play with, all the guys that I played the first 2 years and really just prove myself, to be honest. And the draft, the expansion draft came and went, didn't get picked. So that kind of put me in a spot where, I was not very happy, but at the same time, I mean, I've got to a point in my life where I can sit back and look at it as a man and be like, maybe, I didn't deserve to necessarily get picked up in that. But spots between like 28 to 30 are sort of my range. And honestly, I mean, that's kind of been my life anyways. So kind of
it's your comfort zone, man.
Yeah, right.
You're used to this.
Finding a way to get in and then just prove myself. So, we're coming up on the college draft next Monday, the 26th. And then I'm supposed to hear from somebody, good or bad, next week. So, but when it came up, just started working out again, started picking it up. Not that we stopped, but
just
shifted a little bit.
Back to lax,
so got back with Matt, been running with him twice a week and then working out with you. So we'll see where that goes. And, if it works out, great. If not, we could do another podcast on the transition from playing sports your whole life and then going into business.
There we go. I love
that. That's not easy either.
Well, look, we were talking about it yesterday, and this is blowing smoke, but you're in the best shape of your life right now. Your ankle and foot history is really for the first off season behind you. Like, you're moving better than you ever have. You actually have legs that have some horsepower now, right? And you're not playing now. You haven't played in this body ever, really. So you don't even know what the potential is. So, I feel like you're still climbing the peak, right? You're not there yet. And, a lot of things are out of your control right now. You just need a chance. And get after it and overcome that adversity. And we're all cheering for you. We're all rooting for you. And we hope you get the chance, man.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you hanging out and talking on a Friday afternoon. I think this has been cool. And hopefully people get something out of this to they can apply to their own life, whether it's sports or not, whether it's work, whether it's life, whether I got a lot of stuff going on. Like you just said, kind of quoting Goggins, right? It's people all around you have adversity that they're going through. Everybody has some sort of skeleton in the closet. We're all dealing with it.
Right.
And when you kind of push yourself through something that you've never done before, where you've never been, the growth that happens from that is huge. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't ever get that opportunity. It is an opportunity. It's not a struggle. You just have to flip the way you think about it.
Right.
And it's just been cool to watch your journey and watch the couple opportunities that you've had to do that and who you've become on the other side of it.
Right.
So
yeah, definitely.
thanks for sharing. Thanks for hanging in.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.